Understanding toxic behavior without absorbing it is an essential skill for navigating relationships and maintaining emotional balance. Toxic people often act in ways that can drain our energy, manipulate our emotions, or leave us questioning our worth. And their behavior stems from various underlying factors, sometimes insecurity, jealousy, or an ingrained habit of using negativity to assert control. However, one of the hallmarks of emotionally intelligent and smart individuals is their ability to recognize this behavior without letting it seep into their self-perception or disrupt their mental peace. The first step in handling toxic people is cultivating awareness. This involves being attuned to the signs of toxic behavior, constant criticism, passive aggressiveness, manipulation, or any interaction that leaves you feeling drained or demeaned. Smart people understand that these behaviors often have little to do with them personally and everything to do with the insecurities or unresolved issues of the other person. This awareness enables them to maintain a healthy emotional distance, shielding their own sense of self-worth from the negativity projected by the toxic individual. At the core of not absorbing toxic behavior is the concept of emotional detachment. Emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. Instead, it's about learning to separate your emotional state from the actions or words of others. Smart individuals recognize that they cannot control how others behave, but they can control how they respond to that behavior. They develop a mindset that says this is about them, not me, allowing them to observe toxic patterns objectively without becoming entangled in them. This perspective acts as a powerful shield, protecting their inner peace and self-esteem from unnecessary harm. One of the most effective tools for avoiding the absorption of toxic behavior is developing strong self-awareness. When you are confident in who you are, understand your values, and maintain a clear sense of your boundaries, it becomes much harder for others to undermine you. Smart people invest time in understanding their strengths and weaknesses, embracing their individuality, and fostering self-love. This internal work fortifies them against external negativity, making it easier to brush off toxic comments or actions without letting them linger in their minds. Another key element is maintaining a sense of empathy without enabling. Smart individuals often possess a natural empathy that allows them to understand others' pain or struggles. However, they balance this empathy with practicality, ensuring they do not excuse or justify toxic behavior at their own expense. They understand that while empathy is essential for fostering meaningful connections, it must be paired with discernment to avoid becoming a target for manipulation. Emotional intelligence also plays a significant role. Smart individuals excel at managing their emotions and understanding the emotions of others. They recognize when someone is attempting to provoke a reaction or push their buttons and remain composed instead of giving in to the bait. They respond rather than react, using calm and calculated actions to diffuse situations rather than escalating them. This ability to stay grounded, even in the face of provocation, prevents toxic people from gaining control over their emotions or actions. In addition, they practice selective engagement. They evaluate whether a conversation or interaction is worth their energy before diving in. For instance, if they sense that a toxic person is attempting to provoke a fight or create unnecessary drama, they choose not to participate. They might acknowledge the person's perspective without engaging further, using phrases like, "I understand how you feel," to diffuse tension while maintaining their emotional distance. This approach not only preserves their energy, but also sends a clear message that they will not be drawn into unproductive conflict. And smart individuals are also adept at reframing negative experiences. Instead of dwelling on harmful interactions, they see them as opportunities for growth. For example, encountering toxic behavior might prompt them to reflect on their own communication style, strengthen their boundaries, or refine their conflict resolution skills. By turning challenges into learning experiences, they maintain a sense of empowerment, even in the face of negativity. Another important strategy is building a strong support network. Smart people surround themselves with positive, uplifting individuals who inspire and encourage them. These supportive relationships act as a counterbalance to toxic encounters, providing them with a sense of belonging and reinforcement that counters any attempts to undermine their confidence or well-being. This network also serves as a sounding board, offering perspective and advice when dealing with challenging situations. Furthermore, they embrace the art of self-care as a priority. Self-care is not just about physical well-being, it also involves nurturing your mental and emotional health. As smart individuals carve out time for activities that recharge their spirits, whether that's engaging in a hobby, practicing mindfulness, exercising, or spending time in nature. This consistent self-care ensures they remain centered and resilient, better equipped to face the challenges posed by toxic people. Lastly, they accept that they cannot change others. This acceptance is liberating because it shifts the focus from trying to fix toxic people to managing their own reactions and well-being. They understand that some people may never recognize or change their harmful patterns, and that's okay. Their responsibility is to themselves to protect their peace, prioritize their growth, and maintain a life filled with positivity and purpose. When you refuse to absorb toxic behavior, you reclaim your power. You recognize that your worth is not determined by the opinions or actions of others, but by your own self-perception and the life you choose to lead. Smart individuals embody this principle, navigating interactions with grace and resilience, always prioritizing their mental and emotional well-being. By doing so, they not only safeguard their inner peace, but also set an example of strength and self-respect that inspires others. Managing toxic people requires a balance of understanding their behavior and asserting your own boundaries effectively. The second key point revolves around how intelligent individuals establish and enforce boundaries that prevent toxic people from intruding on their peace and well-being. Setting boundaries isn't about being confrontational or shutting people out. It's about creating a healthy dynamic where your needs and limits are respected. Smart people recognize that boundaries are not just essential for maintaining emotional health, they're non-negotiable for living a fulfilling and balanced life. One of the most important realizations about dealing with toxic individuals is that they often thrive on blurred lines. Whether it's through constant interruptions, overstepping personal limits, or guilt-tripping others into compliance, toxic people tend to exploit situations where boundaries are weak or unclear. Intelligent individuals counteract this by being proactive in defining their personal limits. They understand what behaviors are acceptable to them and what crosses the line, and they communicate these limits with clarity and confidence. When setting boundaries, communication is key. Smart people know that boundaries are most effective when they are communicated directly and assertively without hostility. For example, if a toxic individual tends to unload their emotional baggage without considering your time or energy, you might say something like, "I value our conversations, but I need to take some time for myself right now." This approach is respectful yet firm, signaling that while you care about the other person, you also prioritize your own well-being. It's also crucial to remain consistent in enforcing boundaries. Toxic individuals often test limits to see how much they can get away with, which is why consistency is non-negotiable. Intelligent individuals don't just set boundaries, they follow through on them. If you've communicated that you're unavailable after a certain time or that a particular topic of conversation is off limits, sticking to that decision reinforces the boundary. Over time, this consistency teaches others how to interact with you and makes it clear that your limits are not up for negotiation. But another aspect of boundary setting involves learning to say no without guilt. Many people, especially those who are empathetic or naturally giving, struggle with saying no because they fear disappointing others or being seen as selfish. Toxic individuals often exploit this hesitation, manipulating people into agreeing to things they're uncomfortable with. Smart people understand that saying no is not an act of selfishness, it's an act of self-respect. They learn to decline requests or invitations that don't align with their priorities or values, doing so with grace and without unnecessary justification. In addition to verbal boundaries, intelligent individuals also set emotional and mental boundaries. Toxic people often try to invade your mental space by sowing doubt, creating drama, or manipulating your emotions. Emotional boundaries involve protecting your sense of self-worth and refusing to let others dictate your feelings. For instance, if someone constantly criticizes you or brings negativity into your life, an emotional boundary might involve consciously reminding yourself that their opinions are a reflection of them, not you. One way smart people reinforce emotional boundaries is by practicing selective engagement. They choose not to respond to baiting or provocative remarks, recognizing that engaging in such interactions only fuels the toxic dynamic. Instead, they maintain their composure and either redirect the conversation or remove themselves from the situation. This approach not only preserves their emotional energy, but also discourages toxic individuals from continuing their behavior. Physical boundaries are another important consideration. Toxic individuals may invade your personal space, show up uninvited, or disregard your need for alone time. Intelligent individuals address these issues head on, letting others know what they're comfortable with and what they're not. For example, if someone habitually shows up at your home unannounced, you might say, "I appreciate your visit, but I prefer a heads up next time so I can prepare." This communicates your boundary in a way that is clear yet considerate. Time boundaries are equally vital. Toxic people often disregard others' time, expecting them to drop everything to accommodate their needs or demands. Smart people protect their time by setting clear expectations and sticking to their schedules. If a toxic individual repeatedly tries to monopolize your time with unnecessary drama or requests, you might say, "I have other commitments right now, but we can talk at a more convenient time." By asserting control over their own schedule, they maintain a sense of autonomy and prevent others from derailing their plans. Another tool intelligent individuals use when dealing with toxic people is the concept of detachment with love. This means maintaining a level of care and compassion for the other person while detaching from their toxic behavior. Detachment allows you to interact with difficult individuals without becoming enmeshed in their negativity. It's a way of saying, "I care about you, but I won't allow your actions to harm me." This approach is particularly useful in situations where cutting ties isn't an option, such as with family members or co-workers. Smart individuals also recognize that boundaries are not one size fits all. They tailor their approach based on the specific person and situation, understanding that some toxic behaviors require firmer limits than others. For instance, dealing with a coworker who gossips might involve different boundaries than dealing with a friend who constantly seeks emotional support without reciprocating. By assessing each situation individually, they create boundaries that are both effective and appropriate. Finally, smart people understand that setting boundaries is a form of self-care, not selfishness. They prioritize their mental, emotional, and physical well-being because they know that they cannot pour from an empty cup. When they set boundaries, they are protecting their ability to be their best selves, not just for their own sake, but also for the sake of those who genuinely value and respect them. This perspective reframes boundary setting as an act of empowerment rather than a defensive reaction. In conclusion, intelligent individuals excel at setting and enforcing boundaries because they recognize their value and refuse to compromise their well-being for the sake of others' demands or negativity. Their ability to communicate their limits with clarity and confidence, remain consistent, and prioritize their own needs ensures that toxic behavior does not infiltrate their lives. By standing firm in their boundaries, they create a life filled with respect, balance, and positivity, setting an example for others to follow. Toxic people often employ manipulation as their primary tool to control and influence others. Manipulation is subtle, insidious, and sometimes difficult to recognize, which is why it's so effective. And smart individuals, however, possess the awareness and emotional intelligence to identify manipulation tactics and respond in ways that protect their boundaries and maintain their integrity. Understanding how intelligent people navigate these complex dynamics can provide valuable insights into managing relationships with toxic individuals while preserving your own mental and emotional well-being. The first step in handling manipulation is recognizing the signs. Manipulative behavior often manifests in indirect ways: passive-aggressive comments, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, or feigned helplessness, for instance. A toxic individual might say something like, "I guess I'll just have to manage on my own since you're too busy," which cloaks a demand in guilt. Smart people are attuned to these cues. They understand that such remarks are designed to elicit a specific emotional reaction, such as guilt or obligation, and they resist falling into the trap. One of the reasons manipulation is so effective is that it targets your emotions, especially empathy and compassion. Intelligent individuals manage this by maintaining emotional detachment without losing their sense of care. For example, when faced with a manipulative guilt trip, they might acknowledge the other person's feelings without taking responsibility for them. A response like, "I understand that you're feeling stressed, and I hope you find a solution," expresses empathy, but doesn't succumb to the pressure to fix the problem. Another common tactic of manipulators is gaslighting, where they distort the truth to make you doubt your perceptions or memories. This can be as blatant as denying something they've said or done, or as subtle as twisting events to suit their narrative. Smart people counteract gaslighting by trusting their instincts and keeping a mental or physical record of interactions when necessary. If someone consistently denies their actions or words, referencing specific examples with calm confidence can neutralize the manipulator's attempts to confuse or undermine you. Manipulative individuals also exploit vulnerabilities. whether emotional, psychological, or situational. They might play on your insecurities or exploit your desire for approval to get what they want. As smart individuals mitigate this by cultivating self-awareness and resilience. They understand their own vulnerabilities and actively work on strengthening those areas, whether through self-reflection, therapy, or personal growth. This self-awareness makes them less susceptible to manipulation because they can recognize when someone is attempting to exploit their weaknesses. And boundary reinforcement is another critical strategy intelligent people use against manipulation. Manipulators often test boundaries to see how far they can push, especially if they perceive you as accommodating or conflict averse. And smart individuals set clear boundaries from the outset and enforce them consistently. For instance, if a manipulator tries to monopolize their time with unnecessary demands, they might respond with, "I can help you for 10 minutes, but then I need to focus on my own tasks." This approach balances assertiveness with respect, making it clear that their boundaries are non-negotiable. One of the most challenging aspects of dealing with manipulation is the tendency to personalize the behavior. Manipulators are skilled at making you feel responsible for their emotions or circumstances. Smart people avoid this pitfall by recognizing that manipulation is a reflection of the manipulator's issues, not their own. They don't internalize the blame or negativity directed at them, and instead focus on maintaining their own emotional equilibrium. For example, if a manipulator accuses them of being uncaring, because they've set a boundary, they remind themselves that the accusation is an attempt to regain control, not an accurate reflection of their character. A critical tool in combating manipulation is the power of silence. Manipulative people often rely on engaging you in lengthy arguments or emotional exchanges to wear you down. Smart individuals understand that they don't owe a response to every provocation. Sometimes the best way to handle a manipulative remark or demand is simply to remain silent or offer a neutral response like, "I'll think about it." This deprives the manipulator of the reaction they seek and shifts the dynamic in your favor. Emotional intelligence plays a significant role in handling manipulation effectively. Smart people use their emotional intelligence to read between the lines, understanding not just what a manipulator is saying, but also what they're trying to achieve. This awareness allows them to respond strategically rather than react impulsively. For instance, if a manipulator tries to provoke anger or frustration, they might respond with calm indifference, disarming the manipulator and maintaining control of the situation. Another strategy intelligent individuals employ is redirecting the conversation. Manipulative people often try to steer discussions in their favor, focusing on topics that serve their agenda or distract from their behavior. Now, smart people gently redirect the conversation back to the issue at hand or to a neutral topic. For example, if a manipulator tries to derail a conversation about their behavior by bringing up unrelated grievances, they might say, "I hear what you're saying, but let's focus on resolving this issue first." Smart individuals also understand the importance of having a support system when dealing with manipulation. Manipulators often isolate their targets to maintain control, so surrounding yourself with trustworthy friends, family, or colleagues can provide valuable perspective and support. Intelligent people seek input from their support network, sharing their experiences and gaining insights that help them navigate manipulative dynamics more effectively. In some cases, the best course of action is to limit or eliminate contact with the manipulative individual altogether. While this isn't always possible, such as in work or family situations, intelligent people recognize when a relationship is beyond repair and prioritize their own well-being. They understand that walking away from a toxic dynamic isn't a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of strength and self-respect. One of the most empowering realizations for dealing with manipulation is understanding your own agency. Manipulators thrive on control, but intelligent individuals reclaim their power by making conscious choices about how they respond. They know that they cannot control the manipulator's behavior, but they can control their own reactions, decisions, and boundaries. This sense of agency not only protects them from manipulation, but also reinforces their self-confidence and independence. Finally, smart individuals recognize that dealing with manipulation is an ongoing process. They remain vigilant and adaptable, refining their strategies as they learn more about the manipulator's tactics and their own responses. This proactive approach ensures that they stay one step ahead, maintaining their integrity and peace of mind, no matter how persistent the manipulative behavior may be. In conclusion, intelligent individuals handle manipulation with a combination of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and strategic action. They identify manipulative tactics, set and enforce boundaries, and protect their mental and emotional well-being through resilience and agency. By staying grounded and confident, they not only neutralize manipulation, but also set a powerful example of how to navigate challenging relationships with grace and strength. Smart people know that one of the most powerful ways to handle toxic people is by maintaining their own boundaries with confidence and assertiveness. Boundaries are the emotional and psychological lines that we draw to protect our well-being, and when dealing with toxic individuals, they are non-negotiable. Toxic people often thrive on pushing boundaries, whether through manipulation, guilt-tripping, or making demands that are unreasonable or draining. A smart person, however, understands that healthy boundaries are not only essential for self-respect, but also for maintaining long-term peace of mind. One of the key strategies smart individuals use to protect their boundaries is recognizing when they are being tested. Toxic people often employ various tactics to see how far they can push someone, whether by using guilt, intimidation, or emotional blackmail. For example, they may try to make someone feel responsible for their problems, or they may engage in passive-aggressive behavior to provoke a reaction. A smart person recognizes these patterns early and immediately asserts their boundaries. They calmly but firmly communicate what is acceptable and what is not, making it clear that they will not tolerate disrespect or manipulation. And smart individuals know that setting boundaries isn't about being rigid or inflexible, it's about being clear, assertive, and willing to enforce those boundaries when necessary. They don't allow toxic people to control the narrative or impose their negative energy onto them. Instead, they create an emotional and psychological space where they feel safe and respected. This means learning to say no without guilt and understanding that saying no is a form of self-care. By doing so, they protect themselves from being drained by others' negativity. Another aspect of setting healthy boundaries is knowing when to distance oneself from toxic individuals. While smart people are capable of handling difficult conversations and situations with grace, they also recognize that sometimes the best course of action is to create physical or emotional distance. Toxic relationships, whether they are with family, friends, or colleagues, can take a toll on mental health, and being constantly exposed to toxic behavior can lead to burnout, anxiety, and resentment. Smart people understand that distancing themselves doesn't mean abandoning the relationship, but rather taking time to recharge and preserve their well-being. For example, in situations where a toxic person consistently undermines their confidence or criticizes them, a smart person might choose to disengage from the conversation or take a break from that individual. They know that prolonged exposure to negativity will only reinforce the toxic dynamics and that it's healthier to give themselves space to recalibrate. This ability to step back and create distance shows emotional intelligence and wisdom. So it signals to the toxic person that their behavior will not be tolerated, and it also allows the smart individual to regain their composure and protect their emotional energy. It's important to note that setting boundaries also requires consistency. Toxic people often test boundaries repeatedly, seeing if they can find a weakness or a crack in the resolve of the person they are targeting. And smart individuals, however, know that consistency is key to maintaining their power. Whether the toxic person tries to manipulate, guilt trip, or provoke them, a smart person consistently enforces their boundaries with calm assertiveness. They don't allow themselves to be swayed by the emotional pleas or provocative behavior of others. By staying consistent, they reinforce their position and prevent the toxic person from regaining control. However, setting boundaries isn't always about physical distance or emotional withdrawal. Sometimes it involves communicating clearly and firmly when something has crossed a line. This might involve saying, "I don't appreciate being spoken to that way," or "It's not okay to speak to me like that." The ability to communicate one's boundaries clearly and assertively without getting defensive or angry is one of the most powerful ways to handle toxic people. It shows that the smart person values themselves and their peace of mind, and they are unwilling to tolerate behavior that diminishes their sense of self-worth. Furthermore, a smart person knows that it's crucial to protect their emotional health by avoiding the temptation to engage in toxic dynamics. Toxic people often try to provoke arguments or engage others in emotionally draining discussions that serve only to escalate the conflict. They might bait the smart individual into an argument hoping to elicit a reaction. However, smart people know that engaging in this way only fuels the toxic cycle. Instead of falling into the trap, they recognize the value of silence or disengagement. Rather than Responding to the toxic person's provocations, they remain calm, composed, and resolute in their decision not to participate in the drama. This ability to avoid conflict shows strength and control, as the smart individual knows that their peace of mind is more important than winning an argument or proving a point. One of the most powerful things that a smart person does when faced with toxic individuals is to detach emotionally. This doesn't mean they stop caring or that they become cold and indifferent. Rather, it means that they choose not to allow the toxic person's behavior to affect them on an emotional level. Detachment is about gaining emotional distance from the toxic energy being projected onto them, and it allows the smart individual to maintain their clarity of thought and emotional equilibrium. When they detach, they can view the situation more objectively and make decisions based on logic and self-preservation rather than reacting impulsively or emotionally. Ultimately, by setting firm boundaries and practicing emotional detachment, smart people protect their energy, maintain their dignity, and preserve their sense of self. Toxic people may try to tear them down, manipulate them, or drag them into unnecessary conflict, but a smart person is equipped with the tools they need to handle these challenges without compromising their peace. Through clear communication, assertiveness, consistency, and emotional intelligence, they create an environment where toxic people have no power over them. In doing so, they empower themselves and maintain the strength needed to thrive in any situation.